The transport ship's engines hummed as it approached the massive structure floating in space. Maya Chen pressed her face against the small window, watching the Galactic Defense Academy grow larger with each passing moment. The academy looked like a small moon made of metal and glass, with ships constantly moving in and out of its many docking bays. "First time seeing it?" asked the Zephyrian sitting next to her. His blue skin shimmered slightly under the cabin lights, and his forearms moved in what Maya had learned was their version of nervous fidgeting. "Yes," Maya replied, not taking her eyes off the view. "It's bigger than I expected." The Zephyrian laughed, a sound like wind chimes. "Wait until you see the inside. They say it takes 3 days just to walk from one end to the other." He paused, studying her with his large silver eyes. "You're the human, aren't you? The one everyone's talking about." Maya finally turned away from the window. She had gotten used to this reaction over the past few months. Ever since humanity had been discovered by the Galactic Council, everyone seemed to have opinions about her species. Most of those opinions weren't very good. "I'm Maya Chen," she said simply. "Kextel of the Fifth Wind." The Zephyrian introduced himself with a formal bow of all 4 arms. "I've heard humans are unusual. The stories say your species learns things differently than the rest of us." Maya nodded. She had heard the stories too. According to most of the galaxy, humans were a primitive species that had somehow developed space travel before they should have. The Council had reluctantly agreed to allow one human into the Academy, mostly to prove that her species wasn't ready for advanced galactic society. The transport ship shuddered as it connected with the docking bay. Maya gathered her small bag, which contained everything she owned. The Academy would provide everything else she needed, assuming she lasted long enough to need it. The airlock opened with a soft hiss, and Maya stepped into the Academy for the first time. The docking bay was enormous, with a ceiling that disappeared into shadows high above. Dozens of species moved around her, some she recognized from her studies and others she had never seen before. A tall, insect-like creature with 6 legs clicked past her, its movements perfectly coordinated. A group of what looked like living crystals chimed to each other in harmonious tones. "New arrivals, follow the blue lights," announced a voice that seemed to come from everywhere at once. Maya looked down and saw a line of blue lights embedded in the floor, leading away from the docking bay. She joined the stream of new students following the lights. Most of them traveled in groups with others of their own species, talking in languages she couldn't understand. Maya walked alone, which seemed to confirm what many of them probably thought about humans being antisocial. The blue lights led them through corridors that could have contained entire city blocks. The walls were covered with displays showing star maps, technical diagrams, and what looked like historical battles. Maya tried to take it all in, but there was too much to process. Finally, they arrived at an enormous hall filled with floating platforms at different levels. Each platform held a small group of students and what Maya assumed were instructors. The blue lights led each new arrival to a specific platform, organizing them by species and specialization. Maya's platform was near the bottom of the hall, which didn't seem like a good sign. Waiting for her was a single instructor, a being that looked like it was made of liquid metal held together by some invisible force. Its surface rippled as it moved, and when it spoke, its voice sounded like mercury flowing over glass. "Maya Chen of Earth," the instructor said, consulting a data pad that seemed to float in its liquid form. "I am Instructor Vel9. I have been assigned to oversee your education." The way it said education made it sound like a medical procedure. Maya straightened her shoulders and looked directly at the instructor. "I'm ready to begin." Vel9's surface rippled in what might have been amusement. "According to your species' psychological profile, humans suffer from something called overconfidence. This academy has broken students from species that have been traveling the stars for thousands of years. Your people discovered faster-than-light travel less than 50 years ago." Maya had heard this argument before. Earth's technology had developed in ways that surprised the galactic community. While other species had gradually advanced over millennia, humans had made sudden leaps that didn't follow the normal patterns. The Council found this suspicious and primitive. "Perhaps," Maya said carefully, "our different approach might offer new perspectives." Several students on nearby platforms had stopped their conversations to listen. Maya could feel dozens of eyes, optical sensors, and other sensory organs focused on her. The weight of their attention was heavy, but she refused to look away from her instructor. Vel-9's form shifted, becoming more solid and defined. New perspectives, an interesting phrase from a species that has never successfully integrated with galactic society. The instructor moved closer, its metallic surface reflecting Maya's determined expression. Tell me, Maya Chen of Earth, what makes you think you can succeed where your species has consistently failed? The question hung in the air like a challenge. Maya knew that her answer would set the tone for everything that followed. She thought about her journey to this moment, about the years of preparation and the weight of representing her entire species because, she said, her voice carrying clearly through the sudden silence in the hall, failure isn't something humans accept easily. We have a saying on Earth. It's not about how hard you fall, it's about how fast you get back up. I didn't come here to fail. Vel-9's surface stilled completely for a moment, then began to ripple again. Admirable words. We shall see if your actions match them. The instructor gestured toward a doorway that Maya hadn't noticed before. Your real education begins now. Try not to disappoint your species more than they already have. As Maya walked toward the doorway, she could hear conversations resuming on the other platforms. Most of them were probably discussing the primitive human, who thought she could compete with species that had been part of galactic civilization for centuries. Maya didn't care. She had come too far to be intimidated now. Whatever challenges the Academy threw at her, she would meet them head-on. After all, humans had survived ice ages, wars, plagues, and countless other disasters. One alien academy couldn't be worse than what her species had already overcome. The doorway led to a corridor that seemed to stretch on forever. Maya took a deep breath and started walking, ready to prove that humanity belonged among the stars. Maya's quarters were smaller than a closet back on Earth, but they contained technology that would have amazed scientists from her home planet. The walls could display any environment she wanted. The temperature adjusted automatically to her needs, and the bed molded itself to her body for perfect comfort. Despite all this luxury, she barely slept. Her first day of classes had been a disaster. Or at least, that's what everyone expected. The morning began with strategic analysis taught by Commander Thexvar, a reptilian being whose scales changed color based on his mood. When Maya entered the classroom, his scales were a calm green, but they quickly shifted to orange when he saw her. "Ah, our human specimen arrives," he said, his forked tongue flicking out as he spoke. "Class, today we will observe how a primitive mind attempts to process advanced strategic concepts." The other students, representing 12 different species, turned to stare at Maya. She took the only available seat, in the front row directly in front of the commander's desk. The chair was designed for a different body type, but she managed to make it work. Commander Thexvar activated a holographic display showing a complex star system with multiple planets, asteroid fields, and what looked like two opposing fleets. This is the Battle of Kepler's Gate, fought 300 years ago between the Hegemony and the Free Worlds Alliance. The tactical situation was considered impossible to resolve. Maya studied the display while the commander explained the various factors. Supply lines stretched across multiple systems, political complications, technological advantages on both sides, and environmental hazards that made conventional approaches useless. The Hegemony had superior numbers, the commander continued, his scales now shifting between orange and red. The Alliance had better technology. Both sides had valid claims to the disputed territory. Military historians agree that the situation had no clean solution. He turned to address the class. Who can tell me how Admiral Kestherin of the Hegemony achieved victory? Several hands, claws, and appendages went up around the room. The commander called on a student from the Crystalline Consortium, whose body chimed softly as she spoke. Admiral Kestherin used the asteroid field to mask his fleet's approach, then struck at the Alliance supply depot while their main fleet was engaged in a decoy battle. Correct, the commander said, his scales returning to green, a brilliant use of misdirection and timing. The textbook example of superior strategy overcoming technological disadvantage. Maya raised her hand. The commander's scales immediately shifted to a suspicious yellow. Yes, human? That strategy only worked because both sides followed conventional military doctrine, Maya said. What if the Alliance had ignored the decoy entirely and gone straight for the Hegemony's home system instead? The classroom fell silent. Commander Thexvar's scales cycled through several colors before settling on a dark red, that Maya was beginning to associate with anger or confusion. That would be unprecedented, he said slowly. Military forces don't abandon defensive positions to launch desperate attacks. Why not? Maya asked. If the hegemony fleet was committed to the battle at Kepler's Gate, their home system would be vulnerable. The Alliance could have forced them to abandon their attack or lose their most important worlds. A student from the Avian Confederacy spoke up, her feathers ruffling with agitation. Such a strategy would violate every principle of civilized warfare. The casualties would be enormous, Maya nodded. Yes, it would be terrible, but it would also be unexpected. Sometimes the best strategy is the one your enemy can't imagine you using. Commander Thexvar's scales had shifted to a color Maya hadn't seen before, a deep purple with flecks of gold. Human warfare must be quite different from galactic standards. Very different, Maya agreed. We learned early that survival often depends on doing things others won't expect. The rest of the class passed in uncomfortable silence, with students occasionally glancing at Maya as if she might suggest something else disturbing. When the session ended, Maya noticed that several students made sure to leave plenty of space between themselves and her as they filed out. Her next class was xenobiology, taught by Dr. Nemsada, a jellyfish-like being who floated in a tank of specially treated water. The subject should have been fascinating, but Maya quickly realized that the course was designed to showcase the vast diversity of galactic life and how humanity didn't fit any of the established patterns. Most species, Dr. Nemsada explained through a translation device, develop along predictable evolutionary paths. Environmental pressures shape development in consistent ways across the galaxy. The holographic display showed various species and their evolutionary trees. Maya could see the patterns the doctor was describing. Water worlds produced similar types of aquatic species. High-gravity planets created strong, dense beings, and so on. Humans, the doctor continued, represent an anomaly. Your species developed on a world that should have produced entirely different characteristics. Maya raised her hand again. By now she was getting used to the way conversation stopped when she did this. What if our environment was more variable than most? She asked. Earth has extreme climate variations, diverse ecosystems, and regular mass extinction events. Maybe that's why we developed differently. Dr. Nemsada's tentacles swirled in what might have been interest. Elaborate. Most species seem to have evolved for stability, Maya said, thinking out loud. They became very good at specific things in specific environments. Humans evolved for adaptability. We're not the strongest or fastest or smartest at any one thing, but we can learn to do almost anything. A student from the Hive Collective spoke without raising her hand, which Maya had learned was normal for their species. Adaptability without specialization is inefficient. It wastes resources and leads to suboptimal solutions. Unless the optimal solution changes frequently, Maya replied, then adaptability becomes the most valuable trait. Dr. Nemsada's tentacles moved in complex patterns. An interesting hypothesis. However, galactic civilization values stability and specialization. These traits have allowed us to build an interstellar community that has lasted for thousands of years. Maya nodded politely, but she wondered if stability was always a good thing. On Earth, the most stable things were usually dead. Her final class of the day was applied physics, taught by Professor Quantum Flux, a being of pure energy contained within a sophisticated force field. The professor's form shifted constantly, sometimes appearing as geometric patterns and other times as swirling colors. Today, we will examine the fundamental constants that govern our universe, Professor Quantum Flux announced, their voice emanating from speakers around the room. These constants determine what is possible and what is not. The lesson covered concepts that pushed the limits of Maya's understanding: quantum mechanics at galactic scales, the relationship between space and time, and the energy requirements for faster-than-light travel. Most of the other students took notes using advanced recording devices, but Maya found herself sketching diagrams and writing equations by hand. The speed of light, the professor continued, represents an absolute barrier. While we can circumvent it through folded space technology, we cannot exceed it in normal spacetime. Maya studied the equations displayed around the room. Something about them felt familiar, though she couldn't quite place why. Professor, she said, raising her hand, what if spacetime isn't as rigid as we think it is? The professor's energy form pulsed brighter. Explain. These equations assume that space-time has consistent properties, Maya said, pointing to one of the displays. But what if consciousness can affect those properties? What if the universe is more flexible than our instruments can detect? The room filled with what Maya was learning to recognize as the galactic equivalent of nervous laughter. Professor Quantum Flux's form stabilized into a pattern that looked almost like a raised eyebrow. Consciousness, affecting physical constants, is not scientifically supported, the professor said carefully. Neither was faster than light travel. Until someone figured out how to do it, Maya replied. As Maya walked back to her quarters that evening, she could hear whispered conversations following her through the corridors. The other students were talking about the human who asked strange questions and suggested impossible things. Maya didn't mind. She had come to the academy to learn, but she was starting to realize that she might also be here to teach. The galaxy had spent thousands of years developing one way of thinking about problems. Maybe it was time for a different perspective. After all, impossible things happened all the time on Earth. Humans had a long history of making the impossible seem routine. 3 weeks into her time at the academy, Maya had developed a reputation. Students from other classes would sometimes visit her courses just to hear what unusual questions she might ask. The faculty had begun holding what they called consultation sessions after her classes, though Maya suspected these were actually emergency meetings to discuss what to do about her. The real test came during her first practical examination in the Academy's famous simulation chambers. These rooms could recreate any environment, any situation, and any challenge that a future galactic defender might face. Students were typically given scenarios that tested their mastery of established techniques and protocols. Maya stood outside Simulation Chamber 7, reading the briefing on her datapad. The scenario was straightforward: a diplomatic mission to negotiate the release of hostages held by space pirates. Standard procedure called for careful negotiation, strategic positioning of backup forces, and adherence to 17 different galactic treaties regarding hostage situations. "Remember," said Instructor Vel 9, their liquid metal form rippling with what Maya had learned to recognize as anxiety, "this simulation has been used for 50 years. Every possible solution has been tested and catalogued. Your goal is to demonstrate competency in established diplomatic and tactical protocols." Maya nodded and entered the chamber. The room transformed around her, becoming the bridge of a diplomatic vessel approaching a heavily armed pirate station. The holographic crew looked and acted exactly like real beings from various species, all waiting for her orders. "Status report," Maya said, settling into the captain's chair. "The pirate vessel is holding 12 diplomats from the neutral trade zone," reported the Zephyrian communications officer. "They're demanding safe passage through council space and a hefty ransom. Long-range sensors show at least 40 armed pirates aboard their station." Maya studied the tactical display. The pirate station was positioned in an asteroid field, making direct assault difficult. The hostages were being held in a section with life support that could be easily shut off. By all conventional measures, the pirates held every advantage. "Have we established communication with their leader?" Maya asked. "Yes, Captain. Pirate Chief Grendok has agreed to negotiate, but only under standard hostage protocols." Maya knew the protocols. They involved lengthy negotiations, careful verification of hostage welfare, and eventually either paying the ransom or attempting a risky rescue mission. Both approaches had well-documented success rates that weren't particularly encouraging. "Open a channel to Chief Grendok," Maya ordered. The main screen flickered to life, showing a massive being covered in thick armor-like skin. Grendok's species was known for their size and aggression, which explained why he had chosen piracy as a career. "Council diplomat," Grendok growled, his voice making the ship's hull vibrate. "You know why I called you here. Transfer the credits and your people go free. Try anything clever and they'll be breathing vacuum." Maya leaned forward in her chair. "Chief Grendok, I appreciate your directness, but I have a different proposal." The pirate's eyes narrowed. "I'm listening." "You're operating in this asteroid field because it provides cover and resources," Maya said. "But you're stuck here. Council forces patrol all the major trade routes, and your ship isn't fast enough to outrun them in open space. Your point? What if I told you there was a way to make your ship faster? Fast enough to outrun anything the Council has?" Grendok laughed, a sound like boulders falling down a mountain. "Impossible. Council ships use the best technology in the galaxy." Maya smiled. Council ships use stable, tested technology. But there are other options. She gestured to her science officer. Show him the quantum resonance modifications. The science officer, following Maya's earlier instructions, displayed a series of technical diagrams on the screen. The modifications were theoretical, based on some of the unconventional physics concepts Maya had been exploring in her classes. Grendok studied the diagrams with obvious interest. These modifications, they would really work? In theory, Maya said, but they're dangerous. The resonance field could collapse at any moment, destroying your ship. That's why the Council doesn't use them. But if they worked, you could outrun anything in the galaxy, Maya confirmed. Of course, we'd need to test them first. And testing would require releasing the hostages as a sign of good faith. The pirate chief was silent for a long moment, clearly tempted by the possibility of unlimited speed. Finally, he shook his massive head. Nice try, diplomat. But I wasn't born yesterday. Those modifications are too good to be true. Maya had expected this response. You're right to be suspicious. Tell you what, let me come aboard your station with a small technical team. We'll install the modifications on one of your smaller ships and demonstrate them. If they work, you release the hostages and we provide you with the complete technical specifications. And if they don't work, then you keep the hostages and throw us out the airlock, Maya said with a shrug. You lose nothing. Grendok's expression shifted from suspicion to greed. The chance to gain superior technology was apparently worth the risk. Agreed. But any tricks and everyone dies. 20 minutes later, Maya and 2 holographic technicians were aboard the pirate station. The place smelled like unwashed bodies and recycled air. But Maya forced herself to ignore the discomfort. She had work to do. The modifications she was installing were real, based on theoretical work she had been developing in her applied physics class. The problem was that they were also completely untested and potentially suicidal, but that was exactly what made them perfect for this situation. Quantum resonance field established, reported one of her technicians as they worked on a small pirate fighter. Field generators are calibrated and ready. Maya made a show of checking the readings on her portable scanner. Everything looks good. Chief Grendok, would you like to pilot the test flight personally? The pirate chief's eyes lit up with anticipation. I'll take it myself. If this works, I want to be the first to experience unlimited speed. Maya bit back a smile. Excellent. Just remember, the field is unstable. If you push the engines too hard, the resonance will collapse. Grendok climbed into the fighter's cockpit with obvious excitement. Maya and her team retreated to the station's observation deck, where they could watch the test flight on the external cameras. All systems green, Grendok reported over the communication system. Engaging quantum resonance field. The fighter's engines glowed with unusual colors as the modifications activated. For a moment, everything seemed normal. Then the ship simply vanished, reappearing several thousand kilometers away in less than a second. Incredible, Grendok's voice crackled with excitement. This is faster than anything I've ever experienced. Maya watched the readings on her scanner with growing satisfaction. The modifications were working exactly as she had hoped. The quantum resonance field was creating incredible speed, but it was also creating something else. A subspace signature that was visible to every Council ship within 50 light years. Chief Grendok, Maya said into her communicator. How's the handling? Perfect. I'm going to push it to maximum speed and see what this thing can really do. Remember what I said about pushing too hard? Maya warned, but she knew her warning would be ignored. The pirate chief was drunk on speed and power. The fighter accelerated even faster, becoming a blur of motion among the asteroids. Maya checked her scanner again and nodded with satisfaction. Right on schedule. Maya, whispered one of her technicians, 3 Council patrol ships just dropped out of hyperspace. They're heading this way. I know, Maya said quietly. The quantum resonance field creates a subspace distortion that's visible from light years away. It's like a beacon calling for help. The technician stared at her. You planned this? Before Maya could answer, alarms began blaring throughout the pirate station. The main screen showed 3 heavily armed Council ships approaching at maximum speed. What's happening? Grendok's voice was suddenly filled with panic. How did they find us? Maya activated the general communication system. Chief Grendok, I'm afraid the quantum resonance field has an unfortunate side effect. It broadcasts your location to anyone with the right sensors. You betrayed me. I gave you exactly what I promised, Maya said calmly. Incredible speed and the chance to outrun anything in the galaxy. The question is, can you get back to your station before the Council ships arrive? Through the observation windows, Maya could see the pirate fighter racing back toward the station, but the Council ships were closing fast. The modified engines were indeed faster than anything the pirates had ever seen, but they weren't faster than a Council patrol squadron working together. All pirates, surrender immediately, came the broadcast from the lead Council ship. Your position is surrounded and your escape route is blocked. Maya turned to the nearest pirate guard.
I believe this would be an excellent time to discuss the release of those hostages. Within an hour.
The hostages were free, the pirates were in Council custody, and Maya was back aboard her diplomatic vessel writing her mission report. The simulation ended with a soft chime, and the chamber returned to its normal gray walls. Instructor Vel 9 was waiting outside, their liquid forms cycling through colors Maya had never seen before. That was not a standard solution, the instructor said finally. Maya shrugged. The standard solutions had a 60% success rate. This approach had a 100% success rate. You used deception, manipulation, and untested technology. You put yourself and your team at considerable risk. But everyone went home alive, Maya pointed out. Sometimes the unorthodox approach is the most effective one. Vel 9's form stilled completely. The Academy will need to discuss your methods. Maya nodded. She had expected this reaction. Her approach had worked, but it hadn't followed any of the established protocols that the Academy valued so highly. As she walked back to her quarters, Maya wondered how many more simulations she would be allowed to complete before the Academy decided that her methods were too disruptive to tolerate. She had a feeling that decision was coming, sooner than she would like. The Academy's central administration complex was a maze of crystalline corridors and floating platforms that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions at once. Maya had been summoned here by Director Zon Keleth, the Academy's supreme administrator and one of the most influential beings in galactic education. Maya walked through the complex, following guidelights that shifted color as she moved. Other students gave her curious looks, clearly wondering why she was heading toward the administrative center. Word of her unconventional simulation had spread throughout the Academy, creating a mixture of admiration and concern among her peers. The director's office occupied the center of the complex, a spherical room with no apparent floor or ceiling. Director Zon Keleth floated in the middle of the space, their gaseous form contained within an elaborate environmental suit that sparkled with embedded technology. The director belonged to a species that existed as sentient clouds of particles, communicating through electromagnetic pulses that required special equipment to translate. Maya Chen of Earth, the director said, their translated voice carrying harmonics that made the air itself vibrate. Please make yourself comfortable. A chair materialized from the room's smart matter, adjusting itself to Maya's body as she sat down. She found herself floating at the same level as the director, surrounded by holographic displays showing her academic progress, simulation results, and what appeared to be detailed analyses of her psychological profile. Your performance at our academy has been remarkable, Director Zon Keleth continued. Your instructors report that you consistently propose solutions that violate established protocols, yet achieve superior results. Maya chose her words carefully. I try to think about problems from different angles, Director. Sometimes the obvious solution isn't the best one. The director's form pulsed with colors that Maya couldn't identify. Indeed, your hostage rescue simulation has created considerable discussion among our faculty. Many of them are concerned about your methods. My methods worked, Maya pointed out. All hostages were rescued without casualties and the pirates were captured. The mission objectives were achieved? Yes, but at what cost? The director gestured and one of the holographic displays expanded to show a detailed analysis of Maya's simulation. You used deception, employed untested technology, and placed yourself in significant danger. These approaches contradict fundamental principles of galactic civilization. Maya studied the display, noting how her actions were categorized and analyzed. Everything she had done was marked as irregular, non-standard, or potentially dangerous. There was no category for effective or innovative. Director, Maya said slowly, may I ask you something about galactic civilization? The director's form brightened slightly. Proceed. How long has it been since the galactic community faced a truly unexpected threat? Something that required new solutions rather than established protocols? The question seemed to surprise the director. Their form contracted slightly before expanding again. The galaxy has enjoyed unprecedented stability for over 2,000 years. Our established protocols have proven sufficient for all challenges. And that's exactly the problem, Maya said, leaning forward in her chair. Your civilization has become so stable that it can't adapt to genuine novelty. Every challenge is met with solutions that worked before, even when those solutions aren't optimal. The director's environmental suit sparked with what Maya interpreted as agitation. Stability is not a problem, Maya Chen. It is our greatest achievement. Billions of beings across thousands of worlds live in peace because we have learned to resolve conflicts through established, tested methods. But what happens when you encounter something that your established methods can't handle? Maya asked. What happens when you face a problem that requires thinking outside the box? Such situations are highly unlikely, the director replied, but their translated voice carried less certainty than before. Maya gestured at the holographic displays around them. Director, with respect, humanity's entire existence is highly unlikely according to galactic standards. We developed faster-than-light travel centuries before we should have. We achieved global communication before we achieved global peace. We sent missions to other star systems while we were still fighting wars on our home planet. The director's form shifted through several colors before settling on a deep purple. Your species' development pattern is indeed anomalous. Because we never had the luxury of stability, Maya continued. Earth is a chaotic world with unpredictable weather, regular natural disasters, and an environment that changes constantly. We learned to adapt because adaptation was the only way to survive. And you believe this chaotic background gives you advantages in problem solving? Maya nodded. I think it gives me a different perspective. When you've grown up expecting the unexpected, you're better prepared to handle genuinely novel situations. The director was silent for a long moment, their gaseous form swirling in complex patterns. Finally, they spoke again. Your instructors have recommended that you be transferred to a specialized program, better suited to your unique approaches. Maya felt her heart sink. A specialized program was academy code for separating problem students from the main population. It was the first step toward expulsion. However, the director continued, I am curious to see how your perspectives might apply to more complex challenges. Are you familiar with the Academy's Advanced Problem-Solving course? Maya shook her head. She had heard rumors about advanced courses, but they were typically reserved for students who had demonstrated exceptional mastery of conventional approaches. The course presents students with scenarios that have no established solutions, the director explained. These are theoretical problems that our best minds have been unable to resolve. Typically, students spend years developing new methodologies before attempting these challenges. Maya waited, sensing that there was more to this explanation. I am offering you immediate entry into this course, the director said. Your first assignment will be the Kepler paradox, a theoretical scenario that has stumped our greatest strategic minds for over a century. What's the catch? Maya asked. The director's form brightened with what might have been amusement. The catch, as you put it, is that failure will result in your immediate expulsion from the academy. Success, however, would prove that your unconventional methods have genuine value to galactic civilization. Maya considered the offer. It was clearly a test, possibly even a trap. The academy was giving her rope to either pull herself up or hang herself with. But it was also an opportunity to prove that humanity's chaotic background had produced something valuable. What exactly is the Kepler paradox? She asked. The director gestured, and the holographic displays around them shifted to show a complex star system with multiple inhabited worlds. The Kepler system contains 5 species that have reached technological maturity simultaneously. Each species has legitimate claims to system-wide dominance, but none has the power to enforce those claims alone. Maya studied the display, noting the positions of the various worlds, their populations, and their technological capabilities.
So it's a 5-way standoff?
More complex than that, the director continued. Each species has formed alliances with some of the others while maintaining hostilities with the rest. The alliance patterns shift constantly, preventing any stable resolution. War between any 2 species would inevitably draw in all the others, resulting in system-wide devastation. And conventional diplomatic solutions haven't worked? Every approach has been tried. Mediation, arbitration, resource-sharing agreements, territorial divisions. Nothing creates lasting stability. The system is trapped in a perpetual state of tension that could explode into violence at any moment. Maya nodded slowly. She could see why this problem had stumped galactic strategists. It wasn't just a matter of resolving conflicts between different parties. It was about finding a solution that could satisfy 5 different species with fundamentally incompatible goals. "How long do I have to develop a solution?" she asked. "The course allows 1 full semester," the director replied. "However, previous students have typically required much longer to make any meaningful progress." Maya stood up from her chair, her mind already working on the problem. "I'll take the challenge." The director's form contracted slightly. "You wish to begin immediately?" "Why wait?" Maya said with a smile. After all, humans aren't known for their patience. As Maya left the director's office, she could feel the weight of eyes upon her. Word would spread quickly that the human student had been given an impossible challenge. Most of the academy probably expected her to fail spectacularly. Maya didn't mind. She had grown up on a world where failure was a learning experience, not a final judgment, and she had a feeling that the Kepler paradox was about to meet a perspective it had never encountered before. After all, sometimes the best way to solve an impossible problem was to change the rules of the game entirely. Maya spent the next 2 weeks immersed in the Kepler paradox files. The Academy's database contained centuries of analysis, thousands of proposed solutions, and detailed psychological profiles of all 5 species involved in the standoff. She read through diplomatic transcripts, military assessments, and economic reports until her eyes burned from staring at holographic displays. The more she learned, the more impossible the situation seemed. The 5 species were locked in a web of conflicting interests that defied rational resolution. The hegemony valued territorial expansion above all else. The collective prioritized resource efficiency and scientific advancement. The Federation sought to maintain balanced power structures. The Empire demanded recognition of their cultural superiority. The Alliance insisted on complete independence for all member worlds. Every proposed solution satisfied some parties while alienating others. Every compromise created new problems. It was like trying to solve a puzzle where the pieces actively fought against being put together. Maya was taking a break in the Academy's observation lounge when Kextel found her. The Zephyrian had become something of a friend over the past weeks. One of the few students who didn't seem intimidated by her unconventional approaches. "You look frustrated," Kextel observed, settling into a nearby chair with all 4 arms. Through the lounge's massive windows, they could see the Academy's training ships practicing formation maneuvers in the distance. "I'm working on the Kepler paradox," Maya said, rubbing her temples. "Do you know anything about it?" Kextel's blue skin shimmered with surprise. "The advanced problem-solving course? But you've only been here for 2 months. Students usually spend years preparing for that level of challenge." "Apparently I'm a special case," Maya said dryly. "The Academy is either trying to prove I'm capable of great things or giving me enough rope to hang myself with." "Probably both," Kextel admitted. "What have you learned so far?" Maya gestured toward the datapad she had been reading. "That everyone who's tried to solve this problem has approached it the same way. They look at the 5 species, analyze their needs and capabilities, then try to find a solution that satisfies everyone." "That sounds logical." "It is logical," Maya agreed. "It's also completely wrong." Kextel's forearms moved in the gesture that indicated confusion. "How can a logical approach be wrong?" Maya turned to face her friend directly. "Because it assumes that the current situation is the problem. What if the current situation is actually the solution to a different problem entirely?" "I don't understand." Maya stood up and began pacing, a habit she had developed when working through complex ideas. "Think about it. 5 species, all reaching technological maturity at the same time, all confined to the same star system. What are the odds of that happening naturally?" "Astronomical," Kextel said slowly. "Most systems develop one dominant species, which then either helps or hinders the development of others." "Exactly. So why did all 5 species develop simultaneously in the Kepler system?" Maya stopped pacing and looked out at the training ships. "What if someone wanted them to?" Kextel's skin rippled with shock. "You think the situation was artificially created?" "I think the Kepler system was designed as a test," Maya said. 5 species, each with different strengths and perspectives, locked in a balance that prevents any one group from dominating. It's not a problem to be solved, it's a system to be understood. But who would create such a test? And why? Maya turned back to her friend with a grin that Kextel was beginning to recognize as dangerous. That's what I intend to find out. The next day, Maya requested access to the Academy's deepest archives. Most students were only allowed to research recent history and established academic materials, but the advanced problem-solving course came with special privileges. Maya used those privileges to dig into records that hadn't been accessed in centuries. She found what she was looking for in a collection of documents marked as historical curiosities, reports that were too old or too strange to be considered, academically relevant. Buried among tales of lost civilizations and unexplained phenomena was a single reference to something called the Kepler experiment. The document was fragmentary, written in an ancient dialect that required translation software to understand, but the basic facts were clear. Approximately 3,000 years ago, an unknown civilization had conducted genetic and cultural modifications on 5 primitive species in the Kepler system. The goal, according to the document, was to create a perfect balance of perspectives for optimal problem-solving capability. Maya stared at the translated text for a long time. If this document was accurate, then the Kepler paradox wasn't a diplomatic crisis at all. It was a waiting room. Instructor Vel 9, Maya said, finding her advisor in the Faculty Research Center. I need to request an emergency field trip to the Kepler system. The liquid metal being rippled with surprise. Field trips are not part of the advanced problem-solving course, Maya Chen. You are expected to develop theoretical solutions based on available data. The available data is incomplete, Maya insisted. I need to examine the Kepler system directly to test my hypothesis. And what hypothesis would that be? Maya took a deep breath. I believe the 5 species in the Kepler system were deliberately modified by an ancient civilization to serve as a problem-solving collective. The current standoff isn't a crisis. It's the system working as designed. Vel 9's form solidified into a more defined shape, which Maya had learned indicated serious attention. That is a remarkable claim. Do you have evidence? Maya handed over a copy of the historical document she had found. Vel 9 examined it for several minutes, their surface rippling with what looked like deep thought. This document is ancient and unverified, the instructor said finally. Even if authentic, it proves nothing about current conditions in the Kepler system. Then let me go there and find proof, Maya said. If I'm wrong, I'll accept expulsion from the Academy. If I'm right, then we need to completely reconsider how we approach this situation. Vel 9 was silent for a long moment. Finally, they spoke. I will discuss your request with Director Zahn Keleth. However, I must warn you that field trips to active crisis zones are extremely dangerous and rarely approved. 2 days later, Maya found herself aboard a fast courier ship heading toward the Kepler system. The Academy had approved her request, though Instructor Vel 9 would be accompanying her to ensure she didn't do anything too reckless. The journey took 3 days, during which Maya continued studying everything she could find about the 5 species. The hegemony were descendants of pack hunters who valued hierarchy and territorial expansion. The collective had evolved from hive-mind insects who prized efficiency and cooperation. The Federation came from an aquatic species that had learned to balance competing ecosystem needs. The Empire descended from apex predators who demanded respect and recognition. The Alliance originated from nomadic traders who valued independence above all else. Each species had developed a worldview that was perfectly suited to their original environment. But when confined to a single star system with limited resources, those same worldviews had created irreconcilable conflicts. We're approaching the Kepler system, announced Captain Hextor, a veteran officer who had volunteered to pilot their mission. All 5 species have been notified of our arrival. They've agreed to grant us safe passage, but they're curious about why the Academy is sending representatives. Maya looked out at the approaching star system through the ship's observation port. 5 worlds orbited the central star, each one home to a different species, each one bristling with defensive installations and patrol ships. The space between the worlds was crisscrossed with shipping lanes, communication networks, and the invisible boundaries that marked each species' claimed territory. It's beautiful, Maya said softly, and terrifying. Beauty and terror often go together in situations like this, Vel9 observed. What exactly are you hoping to find here, Maya Chen? Maya pressed her hand against the observation port's cool surface. I'm hoping to find the reason why 5 species were given the tools to destroy each other, but not the wisdom to avoid it. As their ship moved deeper into the system, Maya could see the evidence of the perpetual standoff. Ships from different species maintained careful distances from each other. Communication traffic was heavy but formal. Everyone was watching everyone else, waiting for the first sign of aggression. It was a powder keg waiting for a spark. But Maya was beginning to suspect that the spark was never supposed to come from within the system itself. It was supposed to come from outside, from someone who could see the bigger picture and understand what the ancient civilization had really created in this remote corner of the galaxy, someone like her. The neutral station hung in space between the 5 worlds like a metallic flower, its sections designed to accommodate the different environmental needs of each species. Maya had requested a meeting with representatives from all 5 groups, claiming to have new information about their situation. To her surprise, they had agreed. Maya stood in the station's central conference room, watching as the 5 delegates entered through their respective airlocks. Each being represented millions of their kind, and each carried the weight of centuries of frustration and mistrust. Commander Thek's Corps of the Hegemony entered first, his military bearing evident in every movement. His scales were deep red with gold markings that indicated his high rank. Behind him came Speaker Zan Collective, a being whose individual identity had been subsumed into the larger group consciousness they represented. The Federation's delegate was Admiral Kyle Stream, her aquatic form enclosed in a sophisticated environmental suit that allowed her to function in the station's atmosphere. Emperor Vashketh arrived with the ceremonial robes and bearing that marked his species' obsession with status and recognition. Finally, independent Captain Jex Free represented the Alliance, her nomadic heritage visible in the practical clothing and portable equipment she carried. Instructor Vel9 observed from the back of the room while Captain Hextor maintained their ship's position at a safe distance from the station. Maya stood at the center of the conference table, acutely aware that she was probably the youngest being in the room and certainly the least experienced in galactic politics. Representatives, Maya began, thank you for agreeing to this meeting. I know you've heard countless proposals over the years, and I suspect you're tired of outsiders telling you how to solve your problems. Indeed, rumbled Emperor Vashketh, his voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to instant obedience. Yet here you are, another academy student presuming to accomplish what our greatest minds have failed to achieve. Maya nodded. You're right, but I'm not here to solve your problems. I'm here to suggest that you don't actually have the problems everyone thinks you do. The silence that followed was thick with skepticism. Speaker Zan Collective was the first to respond, their voice carrying the harmonics of thousands of individual thoughts unified into a single purpose. Clarification requested. Our conflicts over resources, territory, and governance structure are well documented and substantial. Yes, they are, Maya agreed, but they're also artificial. Commander Thek's Corps' scales shifted to an aggressive orange. Are you suggesting our concerns are not legitimate? I'm suggesting they were designed to be legitimate, Maya said. She activated a holographic projector she had brought from the academy, displaying the ancient document she had discovered. 3,000 years ago, an unknown civilization conducted what they called the Kepler experiment. They genetically and culturally modified 5 species to create what they termed optimal problem-solving diversity. Admiral Kyle Stream's environmental suit bubbled as she spoke. Ancient documents are often unreliable. Even if this is accurate, what relevance does it have to our current situation? Maya gestured to expand the holographic display, showing genetic analysis data she had compiled during the journey. I had the Academy's computers analyze the evolutionary patterns of all 5 species. According to standard evolutionary theory, you should never have developed the way you did. She highlighted specific sections of the data. Commander Thek's Corps, your species evolved pack-hunting behaviors, but your homeworld's ecosystem should have favored solitary predators. Speaker Zan Collective, your hive mind structure developed on a world with abundant resources, when collective consciousness typically emerges from resource scarcity. Maya continued around the table, pointing out the evolutionary anomalies that marked each species. Every one of you represents an impossible combination of environmental pressures and adaptive responses. You were designed to be different from each other in very specific ways. Captain Jexfrey leaned forward, her expression skeptical. Even if this is true, what does it matter? We are what we are now, regardless of how we became this way. It matters, Maya said, because it explains why every solution to the Kepler paradox has failed. You're not supposed to achieve dominance over each other. You're supposed to work together. The conference room erupted in voices speaking in multiple languages. Maya waited for the noise to subside before continuing. Think about it, she said. 5 species, each with unique strengths and perspectives, confined to a single star system. The hegemony's military expertise, the collective's efficiency, the Federation's balance, the Empire's leadership, and the Alliance's adaptability. Separately, each of you has significant limitations. Together, you would be unstoppable. Emperor Vashketh's ceremonial robes rustled as he shifted position. Cooperation has been attempted many times. Cultural differences make sustained collaboration impossible. Not cooperation, Maya corrected. Integration. The ancient civilization didn't design you to be allies. They designed you to be components of a larger system. She changed the holographic display to show a complex organizational chart. What if the Kepler system was meant to be a single entity? Not 5 separate civilizations sharing space, but one meta-civilization composed of 5 specialized components? Speaker Zan Collective's harmonics shifted to indicate intense interest. A collective consciousness spanning multiple species? The concept has theoretical merit, but practical implementation would require unprecedented cultural adaptation. Would it? Maya asked. Or would it require recognizing what you already are? She displayed a new set of data showing communication patterns, trade relationships, and military coordination between the 5 species over the past century. Look at your actual behavior, not your stated positions. You've already developed an informal integration system. Your conflicts aren't about destroying each other. They're about establishing proper hierarchy and resource allocation within a larger structure. Admiral Calstream studied the data streams flowing across the holographic display. The patterns do suggest unconscious coordination. Our apparent conflicts may actually be negotiation processes. Exactly, Maya said. You've been trying to solve the wrong problem. The question isn't how to share the Kepler system among 5 species. The question is how to formalize the meta-civilization you've already created. Commander Thexcor's scales had shifted to a contemplative blue. This would require abandoning traditional concepts of species sovereignty. Not abandoning, Maya corrected. Evolving. Each species would maintain its unique identity and capabilities while accepting its role in the larger system. Captain Jexfrey crossed her arms. And who would lead this meta-civilization? Who would make the final decisions? Maya smiled. That's the beauty of the design. No one species leads. Leadership rotates based on the nature of the challenge being faced. Military threats would fall under hegemony coordination. Resource management would be handled by the collective. Diplomatic issues would be Federation territory. Cultural matters would be Empire responsibility. Exploration and trade would be Alliance domains. The conference room fell silent as the 5 delegates considered this radical reframing of their situation. Maya could see the mental calculations happening behind their eyes as they evaluated the proposal from their respective perspectives. Finally, Emperor Vashketh spoke. This approach would require trust that has never existed between our species. No, Maya said. It would require recognizing that the trust already exists. You've been locked in this standoff for centuries without destroying each other. That's not failure, that's restraint. You've instinctively preserved the balance because some part of you knows it's necessary. Instructor Vel 9 stepped forward from the back of the room. Maya Chen, this is highly theoretical. Even if your analysis is correct, implementing such a radical restructuring would take decades. Maya turned to face her instructor. Only if you try to do it gradually. But what if you announced it all at once? What if all 5 species simultaneously declared the formation of the Kepler meta-civilization and began operating as components of a unified system? The delegates exchanged glances, and Maya could see the idea taking hold. It was audacious, unprecedented, and potentially brilliant. There would need to be safeguards, Admiral Kilestream said slowly. Protocols for dispute resolution, resource allocation, and decision-making authority. which you've already been developing through your centuries of conflict, Maya pointed out. You just need to formalize them. Speakers and collectives' harmonics rose to indicate excitement. The efficiency gains would be substantial. Redundant military forces could be consolidated. Research and development could be shared. Resource distribution could be optimized across all 5 worlds. And the cultural benefits, added Emperor Vashketh, his authoritative demeanor softening slightly. 5 unique perspectives working toward common goals rather than competing for limited resources. Commander Thek's corps nodded slowly. From a military standpoint, a unified Kepler system would be one of the most powerful forces in the galaxy. Captain Jex Free was the last to speak. It's insane. It's unprecedented. It goes against everything. 6 months later, Maya stood in the Academy's Grand Assembly Hall, watching as representatives from across the galaxy filed into their seats. The hall could accommodate over 10,000 beings, and today it was completely full. News of the Kepler meta-civilization had spread throughout galactic society like wildfire, challenging fundamental assumptions about species independence and political organization. Maya wore the deep blue robes of an Academy graduate, though her graduation had come under unique circumstances. The advanced problem-solving course had no precedent for a student who didn't just solve an impossible problem, but proved that the problem itself was based on incorrect assumptions. Director Zahn Kalith floated at the center of the hall, their gaseous form contained within an environmental suit that sparkled with ceremonial decorations. The director's translated voice carried clearly through the vast space as they addressed the assembled delegates. 6 months ago, a first-year student proposed a solution to the Kepler paradox that defied every established principle of galactic diplomacy, the director announced. Today, we gathered to witness the presentation of the results. Maya took a deep breath and activated the holographic display systems. The hall filled with images from the Kepler system, showing the 5 worlds now operating under a unified command structure. Instead of separate patrol fleets maintaining careful distances, mixed species crews operated jointly designed vessels. Trade routes that had once been heavily defended borders now flowed freely between worlds. The Kepler meta-civilization has been operational for 4 months, Maya began, her voice amplified throughout the hall. The results have exceeded even the most optimistic projections. The first display showed economic data. Resource efficiency has improved by 40% through elimination of redundant infrastructure and optimized distribution networks. Scientific research output has increased by 60% through collaborative projects that combine different species' expertise. Maya changed the display to show military capabilities. The Unified Defense Force is now the most advanced in this galactic sector, capable of responding to threats with speed and coordination that no single species could achieve. But the most impressive changes were cultural. The display showed educational exchanges, artistic collaborations, and technological innovations that emerged from the intersection of 5 different worldviews. Children from different species were learning together, developing perspectives that transcended traditional boundaries. The integration hasn't been without challenges, Maya admitted. Cultural differences that seemed insurmountable had to be addressed through new forms of communication and decision-making. But those challenges forced the development of more sophisticated approaches to diversity and cooperation. A delegate from the Andromedan Consortium raised a crystalline appendage. This transformation appears successful for the Kepler system, but how do you know it can be replicated elsewhere? The conditions there may have been unique. Maya had expected this question. You're right that the Kepler system had unique characteristics, but the underlying principle applies anywhere you have diverse perspectives that need to work together toward common goals. She gestured, and the display changed to showcase studies from across the galaxy. We've identified 17 other systems where similar approaches could be beneficial. In each case, artificial conflicts between different groups are preventing the emergence of more effective collaborative structures. An Imperial senator spoke next, their formal robes rustling with agitation. Are you suggesting that established governmental systems should be abandoned in favor of these meta-civilizations? I'm suggesting that rigid adherence to traditional structures may be preventing optimal solutions to complex problems, Maya replied carefully. The galaxy has enjoyed stability for thousands of years, but stability can become stagnation if it prevents adaptation and growth. Murmurs rippled through the assembly hall. Maya's words echoed arguments that had been growing stronger throughout galactic society. Many systems were experiencing problems that seemed to resist conventional solutions, from resource disputes to technological stagnation to cultural conflicts. Director Zahn Kaleth raised one manipulator for silence. Maya Chen, your success with the Kepler paradox has raised important questions about our approaches to problem solving. However, some members of the Academy faculty remain concerned about your methods. Maya nodded. She had known this moment would come. What specific concerns, Director? Your approaches consistently violate established protocols, came a voice from the faculty section. Professor Quantum Flux materialized as a shifting pattern of energy. You embrace uncertainty, take unnecessary risks, and propose solutions that lack proper theoretical foundation. Because, Maya replied, established protocols were designed for known problems. When you encounter genuinely novel challenges, established approaches may not be sufficient. She turned to address the entire assembly. The galaxy has achieved remarkable stability by developing standardized approaches to common problems. But that same standardization may be limiting our ability to recognize and solve new types of challenges. Maya activated a new display showing comparative analysis between human and galactic problem-solving approaches. Humans evolved on a chaotic world where conditions changed rapidly and unpredictably. We developed cognitive flexibility as a survival trait. Most galactic species evolved in more stable environments and developed optimization strategies instead. And you believe your chaotic background provides advantages? Asked a delegate from the Tau Ceti Federation. I believe it provides different tools, Maya said. When faced with the Kepler paradox, galactic experts tried to optimize the existing system. I questioned whether the system itself was correctly understood. She paused, looking out at the thousands of beings in the assembly hall. The galaxy needs both approaches. Optimization strategies for known problems, and adaptive strategies for unknown ones. Commander Thexkor entered the hall, his hegemony military uniform now bearing additional insignia that marked his role in the Kepler meta-civilization. If I may address the assembly, he said, his translated voice carrying military precision. Director Zahn Kaleth gestured permission. Please proceed, Commander. 6 months ago, my species was locked in what we believed was an irreconcilable conflict, Thexkor said. Maya Chen showed us that our conflict was actually an incomplete cooperation. The transformation of our system required abandoning assumptions we had held for centuries. The commander's scales shifted to a color that indicated deep respect. This human's methods may seem chaotic to those accustomed to established procedures. But chaos and order are not opposites. They are complementary aspects of complex systems. Speaker Zan Collective entered through another doorway. Their collective consciousness now expanded to include perspectives from all 5 Kepler species. The Academy has traditionally valued stability and predictability in its solutions, they said in harmonic tones. But the universe itself is neither stable nor predictable. Perhaps it is time to value adaptability and innovation as well. Admiral Kyle Stream's environmental suit gleamed as she joined the other Kepler representatives. Maya Chen taught us that the question we were asking was more important than the answers we were finding. Sometimes the most valuable contribution is not solving a problem, but redefining it. Emperor Vashketh arrived wearing robes that incorporated design elements from all 5 Kepler species, a visible symbol of the cultural integration that had taken place. This human showed us that leadership doesn't mean imposing one perspective on others. It means creating space for multiple perspectives to enhance each other. Captain Jex Free was the last to speak, her practical explorer's gear marking her as someone who had traveled between worlds. The galaxy has spent centuries trying to manage diversity by keeping different groups separate. Maya Chen showed us how to manage diversity by bringing different groups together. The hall fell silent as the implications of these testimonials sank in. The transformation of the Kepler system wasn't just a diplomatic success, it was a proof of concept for a fundamentally different approach to galactic civilization. Director Zahn Kaleth's form pulsed with colors that Maya had learned indicated deep thought. Maya Chen, the director said finally, your methods have challenged our most basic assumptions about education, problem-solving, and social organization. Maya waited, knowing that the next words would determine not just her future, but possibly the future of human participation in galactic society. The Academy hereby offers you a permanent position as Director of Adaptive Problem Solving, Director Zahn Kelleth announced. Your mandate will be to develop new approaches to challenges that resist conventional solutions. The assembly hall erupted in discussions as delegates debated the implications of this unprecedented appointment. Maya stood at the center of it all, a young human who had somehow become a catalyst for galactic change. As she looked out at the thousands of beings representing hundreds of species, Maya realized that her real education was just beginning. The Academy had taught her about galactic civilization, but now she would help teach galactic civilization about itself.